Welcome to This Is. OnePlus have brought out their cheapest line of phones yet, the Nord N10, and what I have right in front of me, the N100 5G.
And what I have in my hands is the Poco X3 NFC, which is a phone that is pretty comparable, at least by this standard, by this
I'm just going to
spec.
say that my name is longer than yours, and I'd rather have 5G than NFC. So there.
I don't know, why did they denote this with NFC? Is that a feature that is so good and unavailable in other phones to the point where we need to denote it?
No, it's just if a longer name means better phone. Enter the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 2 5G.
I may or may not be using one for notes right now.
I'm so happy that you had that on deck for that stupid joke.
I was hoping that you would throw to it a little bit, but we're not talking about this phone right now. We are talking about some budget entries today, and these two, I think, are actually pretty good.
Here's the thing. OnePlus have been a very interesting phone company for a long time. They started out with sort of budget-priced flagships, which have gotten more expensive and better over the years. What that's left is a huge gap below. Enter the Nord line. So earlier this year, we had the OnePlus Nord, which was a $400-ish phone that had a lot going for it, but it lacked a little bit of that OnePlus magic. Now, with this, the N10 and the N100, specifically, again, I have the N100 here, the N10 is even cheaper. I think the OnePlus formula isn't quite holding up.
So you were telling me earlier that this is very similar to another phone that exists already.
Yeah, so okay, top line on this. Relatively affordable, so this is around 330 pounds. So unlike the previous OnePlus Nord, which was not sold in the US, this will be sold at some point. It seems like maybe a couple months down the road, but it will be sold in the US. So take it at around 300, 350, something like that.
Yeah.
A little bit cheaper, I would say, than something like a Pixel 4a. Also, significantly more expensive than something like that Poco N3 or X3, which that can run you sub $300 right now, right?
Yeah, so you can actually find this, unlike previous Poco phones, you can actually find this on Amazon US for about $270, $280 for this particular spec, which has 128 gigs of storage and 6 gigs of RAM, I believe. Yes, 6 gigs of RAM.
So what makes the Nord special here is that you get the standard Oxygen OS experience, right? So this is, to be fair, running Oxygen OS on Android 10. So it's a little bit behind what you would get on something like the OnePlus 8T or any of the mainline OnePlus phones. I'm assuming that it can't be that far behind on the update, but you still get a very clean build of Android. I will say definitely the biggest selling point over the Poco, which I don't like the skin. It's too aggressive for
Oxygen
me.
OS, even though it's not the newest iteration of it, is still really good regardless. It is super clean. It's very well optimized. It's just a pleasant experience to use. So to preface, Austin was the one that set up this phone before I did. So I literally just came into this just straight on. I saw all the icons right away. I saw the UI. Didn't have the best first impression, but I got really confused by the icons. Their camera logo actually looks really similar to the Chrome one. It's a little bit of a nitpick.
Is that TikTok?
No, that's music. Yeah, no, their icons can use a little bit of work.
The thing is, though, if you put yourself in the mind of a consumer who's spending 300-ish on a phone, there actually is a lot to go with both of these devices. So this is actually a 90 hertz display, and that is a 120 hertz display. Something that, just for reference, you can't get on, I don't know, an $1,100 iPhone 12 Pro Max. Is that a completely fair comparison? No, but that is a really nice feature to have, even though these screens are, I would say, acceptable quality.
At 120 hertz, this actually does make the phone feel like it flies. The biggest downside, though, is the fact that these screens, for as good as the pixel density is and for as nice as they look resolution-wise, they're big phones. And having to maneuver a big phone almost counters the fact that they have fast refresh rates. While the screen might look really snappy, in usability, when you're actually, going from app to app and navigating, it just seems really clunky just because of the size of the phone.
Now, I personally am of the opinion that I like a little bit of a smaller device. So this is like a 6.5 inch screen. That's like a 6.7.
Yeah, 6.7.
These are large phones. They pack big batteries, which is nice. Both support 30-watt fast charging. There are a couple of advantages on the OnePlus side, specifically the fact that this actually does, as the name implies, have 5G. So it's sub-6 5G. I don't ultimately think that that's something that you should go out and make a big deal about. But if I'm looking at the difference between these two phones, I'll take 5G over NFC.
Yeah, mine has NFC. Thank God.
We do have 5G on this, which is something that does not have. I will say it's a nice benefit. It is something that does help the Nord differentiate itself a little bit in this lower end price point.
Sure.
It's nice to see $300 or $350 phones with 5G, but there are things I think are a little bit more important. So the hardware of the Nord N100 is just generic, right? So we do have a headphone jack, which is really nice, and so does that actually.
Yeah, I mean, at this price point, a lot of people want headphone jacks. That's pretty understandable. My big thing is I'm kind of torn on the build quality of both of these in terms of how they feel in the hand. I mean, I'm not talking about the heft at this point. I'm talking about just how they feel like with the backs and how they're plastic. At least the front are glass for both of them, which is nice.
Gorilla Glass 3 and 5.
Yes. Which, I mean, they both feel fine.
Yeah.
The backs are plastic, which at this price point, I'm totally willing to expect. But they are fingerprint magnets, both of them. And the Poco is worse. You can actually kind of see it here. It's worse in person.
Yeah, look at that.
It looks so bad.
It is atrocious.
The OnePlus, I would say, is a little bit better.
It's slightly better.
I'll also just say I don't really like the Poco branding. I think it's a little aggressive.
It's a little heavy-handed. I mean, everything about this phone is heavy-handed. We will get to the cameras in a second, but it does do that typical Xiaomi thing, Chinese phone thing, where it puts the watermark on the bottom of every photo.
Every phone pretty much has the option to put the watermark, but when you take this thing out of the box, if you start taking a bunch of photos, you don't pay attention, they all have Poco watermarks built in. I'm just like, what are you doing? Some people might like it, but to me, Oxygen OS on the Nord by itself means that I would pick this phone over it. Like just that alone.
There's just so much bloat, and it's not even just with MIUI, right? We've seen other brands do this. Samsung does this, LG does this. They have their own suite of apps. It all works with their own ecosystem. But unless you're in their ecosystem, these things just don't really serve a purpose, and they're just extra things that you just want to get rid of. It's just clutter. Okay, so we've talked about price. There is an elephant in the room. So these things cost roughly around $350. How do they perform?
Fine. So they're both using fairly low-end Qualcomm Snapdragon chipsets. So you've got the 735G on the Poco and the 690 on the OnePlus. I would say they're roughly equivalent. So of course you do have the 5G that is built into the OnePlus, which is nice, but performance-wise, they're fine. They're a step below something like the Snapdragon 765G,
They're
which you'll find
pretty
a lot of the
similar too, which is great. Like if you were cross-shopping these phones by chance, like pretty much you're finding creature comforts that are within each phone. Otherwise, mostly similar
what you
experiences.
Expect, like for the Pixel 4a or something. It's about the same for this kind of price point. But I look at that and I think that you look at the iPhone SE 2 at a little bit more, you know, I mean, especially when you look at the OnePlus, it's
you get a flagship chip, right?
Much more powerful. And I would say that the 90 and the 120 hertz displays are good, but you can tell, or at least for me, especially with the Poco, it's not quite as smooth as if you had that flagship processor behind it. That being said, though, smoother screens are always better, even if it's not always at 90, 100% of the time.
I will say that, and this is something that I'm sure a lot of people that are looking for these, you know, lower end phones that they want to look at is for gaming, right?
Yeah.
So we do synthetic benchmarks. I mean, we know where this performs versus other phones. It does okay.
Yeah.
More practical application is I actually ran Genshin Impact on it, and honestly, the experience was fine. I was getting, you know, it's what seemed like 30 frames per second, even with settings jacked. Yeah, no, it actually is fine for even gaming. Genshin is a pretty, you know, intense game to run on mobile. It ran totally fine. I'm sure you can find other experiences when you go up the chain a little bit.
Of course.
But
with these phones, the gaming test is always an important one because any brand new phone in 2020 that's not, you know, $50, you know, Best Buy special, whatever, should run pretty much any game that exists right now.
Yeah.
But 6 months, a year, 2 years from now, that's when the performance of these phones really becomes very noticeable if you're into games, and that when Fortnite 2 comes out or whatever, and it only runs on a Snapdragon 875G or whatever. But look, at the price, totally fine.
Yeah.
So they both have very similar camera setups.
Yes.
So they each have a 48 megapixel main camera. It's a 1.1 over, wait, how do you ever say it? It's 1 over 1.7 inch sensor? It's a large. They both have large sensors. They have good sensors. They also have an ultra wide. I believe the Poco is technically a little bit better on paper.
Yes.
They both have a completely useless depth camera and a completely useless macro
Well,
camera.
I wouldn't say it's totally useless.
Useless camera. Useless.
I don't
Useless.
necessarily
Totally
think so.
useless.
Okay, well,
100%
so
useless.
something that makes these cameras, no, not Demp, not okay.
won't hear it.
He's in his own world. So something that actually makes these cameras look a little better, because they don't look the best, especially in sub good lighting. Sub good lighting. We shot these downstairs from us, and there's daylight that comes in. It's still kind of dark, so you do get a little bit of the grain in the photo. But when you take stuff in portrait mode, that depth camera does help a little bit to do portrait. Which what?
Look, back in my day, we didn't have fake depth cameras. We had fake monochrome cameras. No, the thing is, look, I'm sure the depth sensor is nice, but you've got an ultra wide that helps to give that depth data. In my opinion, and if you work at a phone company and you can yell at me that I'm wrong about this, feel free. My email is listed on the channel. But I don't believe that those depth sensors do anything besides make it look like you have more cameras. Same thing with the macro. Like, yeah, so I took a couple of macro shots on the OnePlus. They look fine, but I think I could have just cropped in on the main sensor. Like, this is just a marketing thing to make the back of these phones look more camera-tastic.
Okay, sure. I don't know if I have anything to back that up, but assuming that that is the case, even still, portrait mode does make these cameras look slightly better because they hide the fact that they're really crappy in like
Lenses.
terrible lighting.
The lenses are not great. I know
They're not.
Specifically with the OnePlus, the lens that they're using here, I assume must be plastic or something, because you get like a lot of flares. Like, it's not well controlled.
They
at
also,
all.
like the back of the phones, get really fingerprinty too, which also adds to the bloom effect, which, you know,
Clean these things
entails to lesser quality, right? The portrait modes do help.
Yeah.
In some of our tests, actually does make them seem pretty pleasant until you start, you know, zooming in at like a little bit.
Absolutely. I would say both of these phones have acceptable cameras.
Yeah.
They're fine. They have pretty good hardware behind them on the sensors. Everything else might be a touch cheap, but it's a decent experience. I would say I would give a slight edge to the OnePlus on the processing side.
The OnePlus app is just straight up better.
Yeah.
The MIUI camera app is hot garbage. In fact, it froze on us while we were taking photos. And that's not even talking about the image processing too. It gets a little too gratuitous with
And
like
they put
saturation
watermarks.
and stuff, and they put watermarks on your photos.
If you take the software out of the equation, which I personally think Oxygen OS is a lot nicer on the OnePlus.
Yeah.
Hardware-wise, these are very similar. They're both large phones, good battery life. You've got good sort of port selection with the headphone jack. They both have hole punches. So the OnePlus has the kind of corner hole punch, whereas you've got the center punch, but it's basically the same thing.
They're pretty smart about it on MIUI, where everything is dark, so you don't see the hole punch. But there we go.
That's pretty much the same. I guess the OnePlus is slightly larger. Also, the OnePlus actually does have a little bit of a larger chen compared to the Poco.
Yeah, the
but
screen to body ratio on the Poco is really good actually for this price. It's certainly not the best that I've seen overall.
Neither of them, I think, are completely like no-brainer kind of devices. You look at something like the iPhone SE2, while it has many disadvantages, it also has a lot of advantages for not that much more money, including things like better water resistance, wireless charging, more performance, and I would say a much better camera. You look at something like the Pixel 4a, which is pretty much square in this kind of price category, and it's got, maybe it doesn't have 5G, but I think it's a little bit of a better size, personally.
Yeah, now this is all speaking from the US market mentality. To be fair, the SE, in all fairness to other markets, is not exactly the same price here, the $499 that we have.
$399.
Sorry, $399. That's in other markets as well. In that kind of situation, if these phones are really affordable in your market, especially compared to the SE, then absolutely. I think these are probably more considerable where they're actually intended to be sold versus, say, here in the US, where, yeah, I love that iPhone SE2 so much. It's such a good deal
You're
here.
right, the prices are very different around the world. But I think my big takeaway is actually not even about the Poco versus the OnePlus, but about OnePlus as a company right now. OnePlus has, I would say, a very good reputation. Everyone likes OnePlus, right? They've got this sort of like, oh, you know, they're the underdogs.
They built that goodwill across the years, right?
This is generic. This is a generic phone.
Yeah.
There's nothing really special about this. If you take off the software and you load it up with the Oppo software or anything else like that, no one would look twice, right? It doesn't have the little OnePlus rocker. Like, it's just, it's fine. There's nothing really wrong with it, but it doesn't make me impressed. It doesn't make me excited. It doesn't make me amped to recommend this to you when there are other devices out there which at least have, like, this is one of those things where it does everything pretty well, but it doesn't do anything great.
This just seems like a pretty safe option. Yes.
Thank you. That is the word, safe.
I would love to see a more competitive version. I mean, even like we say that Samsung cranks out so many, entry-level phones. Their entry-level phones are actually really competitive. Like in the A series, like some of the lower end A series phones, I'd argue are probably more impressive than these.
So thank you very much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to This Is for rantings and ravings about what we think companies should do, because clearly we're experts and have lots of knowledge to offer on why they should make products because we like them and no one else will buy them. And until next time, Ken, would you like to play us out with a musical number?